Hi, K-pop lovers. Welcome back to our channel. Before we get into it, if you've never heard this story before, I promise you're going to want to watch until the very end, because the last part is what nobody talks about. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment. Do you think Chiquita can actually carry this comparison? One word. I'll be reading every single one. Let's go. On February 22, 2023, YG Entertainment uploaded an introduction video for Chiquita, a 13-year-old Thai girl, real name Muracha Fondachafafat, born February 17, 2009 in Nakhon Ratchasima, Thailand. The video was doing what every pre-debut introduction video does, building hype, showing personality, showcasing talent. Normal stuff. But at the very end, Hyun-suk said something that made the entire K-pop internet stop scrolling. He looked at the camera and said, word for word, from a producer's perspective, it's very clear that Chiquita is a special kid. I really hope in the future, she'll be popular just like Lalisa and practice global influence. That's my personal hope. And just like that, before Chiquita had released a single official song, before she had stood on a single debut stage, Hyun-suk publicly tied her name to Lisa of Blackpink. Let that land. Now here's why this is so much bigger and heavier than it sounds on the surface. Hyun-suk is not just some executive making small talk. This is the man who founded YG Entertainment in 1996 and built it into one of the most powerful labels in Korean music history, responsible for Big Bang, 2NE1, PSY, and of course Blackpink. When this man makes a public statement about a trainee, the entire industry listens. And in all of YG's history, he had never, not once, publicly compared a pre-debut trainee to one of his existing global superstars by name. Until Chiquita. And the name he chose wasn't just any name. He chose Lisa. Lalisa Manoble, the Thai member of Blackpink who became arguably the most individually recognizable K-pop idol on the planet. A woman who broke streaming records as a soloist, became a global fashion icon for luxury houses like Celine and Bulgari, and whose career trajectory is almost impossible to replicate. Hyun-suk didn't compare Chiquita to a rising star. He compared her to a once-in-a-generation global phenomenon. And here's the thing most people don't sit with long enough, that is an enormous burden to place on a 13-year-old girl. Let's talk about why Chiquita specifically caught Hyun-suk's eye this hard, because the facts here are genuinely remarkable. Of all 7 babymonster trainees, members who had trained an average of 4 to 5 years, Chiquita had by far the shortest path to being included in the project. She was added to the babymonster project just 3 months after joining YG as a trainee. 3 months. While some of her groupmates had been grinding inside YG since they were 10 years old, Chiquita walked into her first monthly evaluation 3 months in, and Hyun-suk immediately said, she has no fear. I wanted her to be part of the project right after seeing her first monthly evaluation stage. That's not a compliment. That's a confession from a producer who couldn't ignore what he was seeing. And the raw talent backed it up throughout the last evaluation series. During the critical solo mission in episode 6, Chiquita was assigned Olivia Rodrigo's Traitor. Days before the performance, she tested positive for COVID-19. She cried. She was genuinely afraid her voice wouldn't hold up. And then she got on that stage anyway, fresh off a COVID recovery, and delivered a performance so emotionally raw that fans described her as singing like someone going through an actual heartbreak. At 13 years old. YG's own official coverage described how she delivered the song with delicate precision, adding her own interpretation, and captivated everyone in the room with both her technique and emotional expression. Not bad for someone with the least training time in the room. But here's the hook, and this is the part that I think deserves way more conversation. The comparison to Lisa wasn't just a compliment. It was a publicly broadcast standard of success that Chiquita will be measured against for the rest of her career, whether she asked for it or not. Every performance. Every comeback. Every interview. There will always be a portion of the audience running that invisible scoreboard in their heads. Is she getting there? Is she living up to it? Is she falling short? Young Hyun-suk created that scoreboard with one sentence. And Chiquita, a teenager, had zero say in it. The reaction from fans made this tension very visible, very fast. Lisa fans took to social media in force. And their frustration was completely understandable, because the full context here matters. Many K-pop observers and Lisa fans have long argued that YG Entertainment actually mishandled Lisa's career for years, that her global success was built largely through her own relentless work and the loyalty of her fanbase, often despite the label's decisions rather than because of them. And now here was young Hyun-suk invoking Lisa's name and success as evidence of his own eye for talent, while simultaneously using that legacy to build hype for his newest product. Fans called it out immediately. One side of the reaction said, "You don't get to use her name as a marketing tool." The other side worried it wasn't fair to Chiquita either, saddling someone who hadn't debuted yet with a comparison to a decade-long legacy. Both reactions were valid. And together, they pointed at the same uncomfortable truth. This comparison put Chiquita in an impossible position from day one. Here's the final layer that genuinely makes this whole story even more complicated, and this is the part most videos about Chiquita quietly leave out. The man who made this declaration is himself a deeply controversial figure. Young Hyun-suk stepped down from all positions at YG Entertainment in 2019 following the Burning Sun scandal. In November 2023, the same year babymonster debuted, the Seoul High Court found him guilty of coercing a former trainee to retract her testimony in the drug case involving iKON's BI, and sentenced him to 6 months in prison, suspended for 1 year. That sentence was later upheld by the Supreme Court in July 2025. The man who publicly handed Chiquita the "Next Lisa" label is a man whose own credibility is permanently complicated by those legal proceedings. It doesn't erase what he saw in her as a producer. But it does mean the prophecy he attached to her comes from a complicated source, handed to a teenager who had no say in any of it. And through all of this, the comparison, the backlash, the pressure, the legal cloud hanging over her label's founder, Chiquita has just kept working. She is the magne of a debuted, performing, globally touring group. babymonster released their debut album Drip in November 2024. She stood on stages, delivered vocals, won music show trophies alongside her members, and continued to grow as an artist. The talent young Hyun-suk saw in that first evaluation room is clearly real. Nobody is disputing that. But talent was never the only thing that determined whether an idol reaches Lisa's level. Lisa's global success was the product of years of work, timing, cultural momentum, and her own individual hustle beyond the group structure, much of which happened despite the label, not because of it. Chiquita cannot be engineered into that outcome by a producer pointing at her and saying, "That one." And the weight of being told, at 13, that you are expected to become the next version of your own idol, the person you genuinely look up to, is a weight that doesn't show up in any performance metric. It lives quietly. It follows you everywhere. That is the real story here. Not just that young Hyun-suk saw something extraordinary in Chiquita, which he clearly did. But that in saying it out loud, publicly, with Lisa's name attached, he handed a teenage girl something she didn't ask for and can never put down. Whether that turns out to be a launchpad or a ceiling depends entirely on factors neither of them can fully control. But the burden is real. And Chiquita is carrying it. If this gave you a different way of thinking about Chiquita, or about what we ask of young artists when we put famous names on their shoulders, please like this video, it means everything to this channel. Share it with a fellow monsties or blink who needs to hear this. And subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. Drop that comment below. I asked you at the start for one word. Now that you've heard the full picture, has your answer changed? See you in the next one. Ahyeon.